Mabuhay! This is the art of human beings being human. Ronnie Protasio here, and we are now in Module 6, Popular Culture in the Philippines. In this module, the learners are expected to differentiate the three kinds of popular from each other, give examples of two kinds of culture, identify the three levels of culture, come up with a list of each element of culture, and differentiate pop culture from folk culture, indigenous culture, and nationalistic culture. Now, let's talk about the word popular. There are three kinds of popular. The first kind is something inferior, but because of its availability, it becomes very popular, like the plastic sando bag. You see it anywhere and people use it and reuse it in different ways before you finally decide to throw it away. The second is something or someone intentionally seeking attention, like for example, Vice Ganda, who became popular because of his eccentric ways. Lastly, something liked by everybody. Milk tea became popular because it is liked by a lot of people. Can you give examples of each kind of popular? Go ahead and share your examples and pictures in our Edmodo assignment. With regards to culture, there are two kinds of culture. The first one is a highly valued representation of a people's culture, like the Banawe rice terraces, which represents the industriousness of the Ifugaos. The second kind of culture are traditions, artifacts, and perceptions created by a people who generally share a geographic region of the world. For example, the Pahiyas Festival of Lukban, Quezon, the Taka of Paete, Laguna, the Bulul of the Mountain Province. Can you give examples for each kind of culture? Go ahead and share. There are three levels of culture. We have high culture, the middle culture, and the low culture. In popular usage, the term high culture identifies the culture of an upper class, for example, an aristocracy, or of a status class, for example, the intelligentsia, and also identifies a society's common repository of broad-range knowledge and tradition that transcends the social class system of the society. For example, our folk culture. Also referred to as subculture, low culture is a disparaging term for some forms of popular culture that have appeal to the masses or the bakya and the jologs crowd. Middle culture is a mixture of cultural elements from two or more cultures, also known as hybrid culture. Many people, for instance, enjoy high art and classical music, but they also find camping funny or watch some reality shows and listen to popular music. This is where most of us fall. A common way to understand culture is to see it as consisting of four elements that are passed on from generation to generation through independent learning. They are, number one, values. Values are comprised of ideas about what in life seems important. Number two, norms. Norms consist of expectations of how people will behave in various situations. Number three, institutions. The structures of society within which values and norms are transmitted. And number four, artifacts. Artifacts are things or aspects of material culture derived from a culture's values and norms. These are the four elements of culture: values, norms, institutions, and artifacts. You can work on the activity on page 9 and come up with a list for each element of culture. Popular culture, according to national artist for literature Bienvenido Lumbera in his book Revaluation, Essays on Philippine Literature, Theater, and Popular Culture, is highly different from folk culture and nationalistic culture of the Filipinos. In a nutshell, folk culture is the way of living in a place, in a specific time, and portrays the practices of a certain people and how they cope to survive with nature. For example, folk stories, legends, myths, customs, and beliefs in a culture that are unwritten and passed down orally from generation to generation. These also include the traditional dances and rituals observed by small-scale groups usually found in rural areas. Nationalist culture is the culture created through colonial resistance with the collective of the people on a given place and time. Folk culture and nationalist culture are different from popular culture, which can be traced even in the period of Hispanization of the Philippines. About 15% of the population is made up of what are generally defined as indigenous people. They are the descendants of the original inhabitants of the Philippines. Many of these groups were virtually untouched by the Spanish and American influence and largely retained their customs and traditions. We call this indigenous culture. An example of indigenous culture are the Aitas. The Aitas are among the earliest known migrants or inhabitants of the Philippines. Over the years, the majority of their population managed to keep their cultural practices and traditions. But sadly, as one of the indigenous groups thriving in the country, they also face challenges such as displacement, marginalization, and poverty. Aitas are characterized by their skin color, height, and hair type. They mostly have dark to dark brown skin, curly hair, and are usually below 5 feet tall. Traditionally, Aitas are hunting and gathering people. They're actually among the most skilled when it comes to jungle survival. They are even able to make use of plants as herbal medicine and possess tools and weapons. While they are nomadic, they are able to build temporary houses made of sticks. According to Lumbera, popular culture in the Philippines was created and used by the Spaniards to the native Filipinos or Indios via plays and literature to get the heart of the natives and win it. The colonial origin of popular culture found in the Philippines can be traced by looking at salient developments in Philippine literature. The children of the native elite, under the tutelage of the missionaries, became the core group of intelligentsia called Ladinos, as they became instrumental in bringing into the vernacular literary forms that were to be vehicles for the pacification of the natives. Forms of popular theater and literature such as the Pasyon, Cenaculo, and Corrido ensured the acceptance and spread of Christianity. And the Commedia and the Awit did the same for the monarchy. Popular culture, as introduced by the Spanish, was popular to the extent that it was a watering down of Spanish European culture for the purpose of winning the general populace over to the ideology of the colonial regime. Popular culture at the time was created by colonial authorities with the aid of the local intelligentsia to promote the interests of the church and the state. However, once the native intelligentsia saw the effects of popular culture and knew how to work its way as propaganda, they soon used the Spanish weapon against them in the 19th century. Through the propaganda movement, the native intelligentsia used the same forms of popular culture to undermine the power and abusive friars and rally the populace to put an end to the colonial rule. One example is the work of Marcelo H. del Pilar, when he soon used prayers such as the Ginoong Maria and Ama Namin in a sort of parody to strike against the abusive Spanish friars in his work Dasalan and Tuksuhan. Here is an example. Aba, Ginoong Maria, nakapupuno ka ng alkansya. Ang fraile sumasa inyo. Bukod kanyang pinagpalat, pinaghiguit sa lahat. Pinagpala naman ang kaban mong mapasok. Santa Maria, ina ng diretsos, ipanalangin mo kaming huwag anitan ngayon at kami ipapatay. Siya nawa. Watch the YouTube video on folk culture, pop culture, and indigenous culture for a clearer understanding of the topic. Be able to classify Filipino culture according to these classifications. The advent of American colonialism brought the properly so-called popular culture to the Philippines. The liberal policy regarding the printing press, soon through radio, television, and film, increased the circulation of popular culture forms. Not only through these forms, but also in new media then, such as films. Hollywood films had a near monopoly in the Philippine market, especially in the absence of European movies due to World War I. You can watch the YouTube video on the colonial mentality of Filipinos and ponder on this question. What can we do to show our nationalism or love of country? According to Professor Bienvenido Lumbera, popular culture is power, and whoever wields it to manipulate minds is likely to find its literary and technological machinery turned against him when the mind it has manipulated discover its potency as a political weapon. The Filipino popular culture is now adopted and practiced by many Filipinos. We can all agree that it has positive and negative effects in our identity and country. We just have to always look at the brighter side the history has given us. So, my fellow human beings, that ends our lesson on popular culture in the Philippines. I hope you learned something from this video. See you in the next module. If you find this video useful, please like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Art of Human Beings Being Humans, and hit that bell button for more videos. And remember, being humans, we become human beings through the arts. Mabuhay!